I hope everyone is doing well today. It's kind of a nice, beautiful, sunny day here, so I have no complaints. Today is another witchy video, in case you couldn't tell by my makeup look today. And we're going to be discussing the Sabbats and Esbats. I've seen a few witches online and, on YouTube particularly, discuss the Sabbats in great detail, but not so much the Esbats. You hear them throw the word around here and there, but you don't really hear them discuss what it is. So today I'll be going through what Sabbats and Esbats are, how they're basically celebrated, and what the difference between them is. If that's something you think you're interested in, go ahead and keep on watching. I do want to make you aware of a couple of things. One is the fact that since I'm doing all of this in a single video, I can't spend a lot of time discussing every single aspect of every single Sabbat, or we'd be here for 3 hours. If you want a little more detail about Sabbats than what I give you in this video, I suggest you go over to Harmony Nice's channel. She's a really sweet girl, and she does a wonderful job discussing what the different Sabbats are in very vivid detail and explaining all the ways you can celebrate them and what their full meanings are in her words. Before we get too far into this, I do want to make you aware of something. I can't really go into full detail on the meanings of every single Sabbat, or we'd be here for 3 hours. So if you're interested in learning every in and out of every Sabbat, I suggest you go to Harmony Nice's channel. She's a very sweet girl, and she does an amazing job explaining every single aspect of every single Sabbat. I think she even has a playlist for it. So let's begin with the Sabbats. What are the Sabbats? The stripped back, easy to understand sort of definition of a Sabbat is basically the main celebrations that witches and pagans celebrate during the year. A witch's year is represented in a wheel, generally referred to as the Wheel of the Year, and each Sabbat coincides with a certain season that happens during the year. The reason the Sabbats came to be in the first place is because it was a way for ancient pagans and witches to kind of explain the seasonal changes and why they were happening around them and how it went along with what their deities were doing at the time. No matter what kind of witch you are, every Sabbat has the same general meaning, but the deities celebrated and the actual methods of celebration vary greatly depending on what kind of witch you are, what culture you celebrate, what path you've taken. Those will definitely account for how you celebrate. So now that the basic definitions out of the way, I'm going to kind of walk you through each Sabbat and the basic idea behind each one. The first one we have is Samhain, which most witches argue is the most important Sabbat of the entire year. It's referred to as the witch's new year. Samhain marks the time of the year when the veil between the land of the living and the land of the dead and the spirit worlds are at their very thinnest. It's extremely easy to communicate with the other side, and they are all around us at the time. It also marks the time of the year when summer is on its way out and winter is coming, and most people decide to celebrate it by letting go of whatever hasn't been serving them well throughout the year and determining what will help them live a better life in the coming year. Yule is the next Sabbat. It marks the longest night and the shortest day of the entire year and the start of winter. Some people refer to it as Yule and others refer to it as the winter solstice. Depending on the witch, Yule can be celebrated for 1 day or for 3 consecutive days, because there are 3 days in which the day is very short and the night is very long. It tends to be a celebration of the sun god being reborn and the fact that once he's strong enough, he'll be able to bring back summer. Yule is a very good time of the year to concentrate on what will help you feel renewed and recharged and reborn yourself. So it's a good time to contemplate things that will strip away anything old and bring in the new. And Mulk is a little bit confusing to new pagans or new witches because most people see it as a celebration of spring. That's not quite correct. It's actually a celebration of the fact that winter is slowly beginning to fade away and spring is coming soon. So spring isn't quite here yet, but it's on its way, and we're celebrating the fact that it's coming. It's the time of the year when whatever goddess you believe in is helping whatever god you believe in to gain enough strength to be able to bring the sun back to the world. It's a very good time of the year to do any healing or creativity rituals and spells that you have in your little brain arsenal. The next Sabbat is Ostara. Ostara is also known as the spring equinox, and obviously it marks the beginning of spring. Since spring is the time of year when everything is beginning to make and have babies, and winter is completely gone now, and everything's slowly beginning to turn green again. Flowers are blooming. Everything is beautiful and new on the land. It's a good time to focus your energy on fertility spells and rituals. If you are someone like me and you're not able to have babies, or you're not interested in fertility, another thing that you can work on celebrating instead of that still kind of goes hand in hand with the celebration, is spells and rituals that help usher in new beginnings and inner growth. This next Sabbat is one that is a lot of fun for witches, and it is Beltane. Beltane is also called the summer solstice. It marks the beginning of the summer, and obviously witches like summer. And what does summer represent? It represents warmth, it represents light, it represents everything being bright and happy and hot and exciting. Winter is gone for a long time, he can't touch anything, and the sun god is at his greatest power. And since the sun god represents the sun, obviously, and fire, Beltane is known as the Fire Festival. People do crazy things for Beltane. They tend to have giant bonfires that celebrate the sun god, and it is so much fun. Since the sun god's power is granting so much life and so many wonderful things to us during the summer, it's an excellent time to focus all of yourself on abundance spells and rituals. The next Sabbat is Lissa. Lissa is the celebration of midsummer, and some people also refer to it as the Midsummer Festival rather than Lissa. This is the time of the year when all the land is at its warmest and its brightest. It's also the time of the year when the holly and the oak king, or the god of winter and the god of summer, begin to go to battle and fight each other for power. Ultimately, obviously, the god of winter ends up winning over the god of summer, and the god of summer ultimately ends up having to go back to sleep, become dormant again as winter returns. But this is the start of the battle, and that means we have the light of the sun god and the darkness of the god of winter fighting each other, which means it's very important during this time of the year to sit down and really focus on the fact that witchcraft is all about balance. You can't have light without darkness, and you can't have darkness without light. They just cannot exist without one another. So even though it's good to always let the light side of yourself win, so to speak, and help you through your life, it's also important to embrace the darker side of yourself, to understand that your darker aspects don't make you a bad person. They don't mean that you've only done terrible things in your life. It just means you're in balance. Celebrate the dark side of yourself equally as much as the light side of yourself. The next Sabbat is called Lammas or Lunasa. Actually, a lot of modern witches and pagans don't really celebrate this Sabbat anymore, and the reason is because, one, it's kind of redundant in a way because it's very similar to the Sabbat that comes right after it, and two, it primarily focuses on a singular god from a singular path, and that makes it very difficult for people of paths other than that one to celebrate it. You still can. You can find whatever deity or creature kind of matches up with Lu, but it can be tricky, and since we don't really have to worry about the same things as our ancestors did, it's not really necessary. Basically, Lammas is just a celebration of the fact that summer is ending and the harvest season is around the corner. So basically you're celebrating the fact that soon fall is going to be here, but a majority of the festivities center around Lu, and if Lu is not a god that you work with or that is a part of your path, it will be tricky for you to get into that festival. The last Sabbat is Mabon, and Mabon celebrates the changing of the seasons from summer to the fall harvest. See what I mean by it's kind of redundant? Most people do Mabon instead of Lunasa/Lammas because it's, again, back to, being a little more vague about which gods you can celebrate. Night and day are at equal length during Mabon, which is super exciting. You have plenty of time for your daytime festivities and plenty of time for your nighttime festivities. This is a time of year when preparations for winter can begin. Yes, winter is still quite a little ways off, but as soon as fall gets here, it will be chillier, so start preparing for things like that and start preparing for, celebrating the harvest. Obviously, if you're not a farmer, you won't be celebrating the harvest the way your ancestors did by planting and reaping all of your crops. Instead, use that as a type of symbolism for your life. What should you be planting the seeds of to make sure that your new year come Samhain will be bountiful and fruitful for you and positive, and what should you weed out and get rid of so that you don't have to worry so much about negativity during the next year. Now that we've gotten Sabbats out of the way, hopefully clearly enough, it's time to talk about Esbats, since people don't know them as well. Esbats are commonly referred to as the second wheel of the year, and it coincides with the 13 lunar cycles that occur during the witch's year. Right there, I'm going to stop before I go too much further. The witch's year is different from a calendar year. A calendar year has 365 days, as I'm sure you've known since elementary school. A witch's year is different. Since a witch's year centers around the Sabbats and the Esbats, which are the lunar cycles, it's longer. It takes longer than 365 days for the lunar cycles to occur. So a witch's year is actually about 374 days. One of the ways I make this kind of thing easier on myself is I actually have a lunar cycles planner, a daily planner, and it kind of tells you every single lunar cycle that's happening, what it means, how you can celebrate it and utilize it for your own craft. And I also have a witch's calendar. It's a calendar made only for witches. It has all the information you could possibly need about not only the lunar cycles, but also about the Sabbats, what you can plant if you're someone who likes to plant your own herbs and everything, what colors work, what candles you can use. It tells you everything you could possibly need. So I highly suggest investing in a witch's calendar. Generally speaking, the Esbats are celebrated on either a full moon or a new moon. You can celebrate them on both, but not a lot of people do because, let's face it, you'd pretty much be spending all of your time celebrating Esbats and Sabbats, and most of us just don't have that kind of time to invest in it anymore. Since the moon is represented as a feminine energy, the Esbats are typically a celebration of the goddess rather than the god. The god is celebrated quite a lot during the Sabbats, and the Esbats are more for her. There are people who give different names to these different cycles, but generally speaking, most people just refer to them as Esbats or the full moon or the new moon. I myself, if I'm doing a ritual or if I'm doing a very powerful spell for somebody else, I tend to try to do them during a full moon or a new moon because the power is twice as strong as it usually would be because of that power from the goddess. So I hope this was educational and kind of fun for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I know I couldn't go into a ton of detail on what each Sabbat was and how to celebrate it. It's because, again, I'd be here all day trying to explain it to you. It's very difficult to get to the nitty-gritty. If you want a little more explanation, again, Harmony Nice is perfect for you to go to. And just remember, those basic general ideas are the same across the board, but depending on what deities or creatures or spirits you work with, you know, you can kind of tweak the meaning a tiny bit to match up with that. Hope you enjoyed this video. It was pretty fun to talk about and make. And as always, do something that makes you happy today, no matter what anybody else thinks about it, and I will see all of you again soon.